Well, I'm mega happy and so proud to be here. It's a great privilege, actually, to share my personal story because, frankly, I've never done it before. So, Robert, you'll be the first, and all of you first to hear. I kind of on the shy side to talk about myself. I'd rather talk about other people and put them on the spotlight. But since I have this opportunity, I'll make sure I'll deliver my story and learnings that I have, went through in order to help you also to maybe see yourself in certain situations, because life is not bed of roses. And I assume most of you are already freelancing, right? Are there anyone who is starting? Probably most of you already quite in the process, right? So you definitely will recognize yourself in some of the stories or situations I'll share. And hopefully that will help you to realize that you're not alone in that. It can be typical. There is way out of it. You just have to believe yourself and stay strong. So I have actually structured my story in several blocks. So I'll explain who I am and what I'm doing, a little bit of my background. I'll talk about my work and what I do. I'll also share how I started freelancing and the lessons I learned, the most painful ones. And I'll also talk about the community that Robert mentioned and what we do there. And also there is quite a story behind. And also I'll talk about working with freelancers because I'm hiring freelancers as well. So from that perspective, I can tell you certain things that actually freaks me out sometimes as a customer, and certain things that you can avoid doing just to in order not to create this strange perception about freelancing. And I'll finish with takeaways and maybe some fun stories as well to share. So let me start with this. That's my presentation, the most sophisticated ever. I'll start sharing a little bit about myself so you know who I am and what I do. The breaking point for me, and when I look back now, and actually when I was preparing for this presentation, the breaking point for me and for my work in general was a trip that I did to US. For 6 months, I went to work in a local country club and to gain experience. In order to achieve that trip, I had to change the faculties. I had to pass like 30 exams in 1 month, and I made it. So I made to that trip just for the reason to learn more, a little bit about the world, about different cultures, about different people, to have this experience and also improve the language, obviously, because at that point I realized in order to do something on international scale, I didn't see future in my local market. I needed to have a language. And as I returned from that trip, I immediately got an international job, which was associated with events. I was joining an association which was dealing with globalization issues for businesses. And that is absolutely awesome moment as well, because in early 2000, if you remember, and if you think about brands like IBM, Hewlett Packard, Cisco and stuff, they were not selling online. They were selling packages, CDs packed in a carton and sending to different countries. And that was the globalization process at that time. So I had the pleasure actually traveling from Asia to US, running these conferences, meeting with people, learning how they, how they do global business and how they develop all these processes around it. That was great. I think 6 or 7 years, but like any good thing, it came to the end because association ceased to exist, and I was in the market. But luckily, during these trips, I met a person who now became my husband 13 years later, who invited me to come to Belgium. We started dating, and he said, listen, why don't you consider coming to Belgium and look for a job in Belgium? And I have to be honest, despite the fact that I traveled so much, I had no idea where the Belgium is. It's such a tiny spot on the map that you just, okay, I knew there is European Union headquarters and stuff. I'm like, but what the heck is it located? I had no idea. I thought, all right, I'll try it. I'll come maybe to see for a few months and, learn the language and see how it goes. So 6 months later, as I moved to Belgium, I found a job and I thought, okay, if I'm changing everything, I'm changing the country, like probably going to change my habits and everything associated with the culture. I'm going to change the job direction as well. And I was so happy to get a job as a sales executive for a software development company that was developing software for banks. And I genuinely hated that job. My sales skills are totally awful. And 6 months later, I was so happy that it was 2008, because if you remember, there was a banking crisis, banks were collapsing. Nobody wanted software at all. And I'm like, ciao. That was the end of it. And no matter how desperately I wanted to leave the event business, because it's very exhausting. It's very stressful. It involves lots of time and effort, and it's really so much detail oriented that at certain points you just go crazy. Even though I tried to avoid coming back to that sector, the destiny brought me back to event business, and I started working with agencies and PCOs. PCO stands as a professional conference organizer. These are the companies who are working with corporates or associations and help them to run the events processes. And what I learned by working with these organizations for another like 5 or 6 years is that it's such an unregulated industry in terms of gray schemas, and transparency. Clients were cheated. People were overworked because they're hiring juniors and then drop like hundreds of projects on them. And really all the time that I was doing that job, which I really like because of the travel, because of the connections, because of the fact that I could see the world, I really hated the fact that so much lies are behind clients' back. And at the same time, unfair treatment towards employees. So the thoughts about becoming independent actually was already in my head since my time in Russia. They became more and more real in terms of like I was adamant to start on my own because I couldn't see that anymore, and I wanted to do things differently, and I wanted to help those companies to run events more efficiently and without losing so much money. And unfortunately, also at that time, I started learning that my reputation was at risk because there are certain rumors were passing from the employee that hired me, and I thought, okay, if that is going this way, I'm also going to do my own way. And my strategy was actually to get the client of their own and live with the client. This is off record. So what I started doing is I started talking to people I was working with in terms of, hey, are you would you be interested in working with me directly, because I'm planning to start my own business. And, obviously for me, it's important to have a customer. And one of them said, yes. They said, yes, we really like working with you, but not with the company. And whenever you're available, we're happy to give you a contract. So that was for me a very easy switch in terms of going into freelancing. And I know there are different scenarios for many of you who first leave the job and then they start developing the contact base and trying to find a contract. When in my case, just because of this ridiculousness of the situation and this unfair treatment towards myself and the customers, I just went that way. And maybe to demonstrate a little bit of unfairness so that you can understand, like a simple example could be, so I lived about 2 hours away from the office. So for me, every day commute 2 hours to the office, then 2 hours back. And working with Asia and US at the same time, it means you start your work at 6 and you maybe finish at about midnight, and you have to be in office. It wasn't COVID yet. Nobody was allowing remote work. You're 15 minutes late, you have a registered letter that you're late. There is no concern whatever about safety of the employees. Anyway, it was mega crazy situation. So that's how the thoughts of, having more flexibility, seeing that actually the things can run much better and easier on myself, made me realize that freelancing is the way forward. And also another crucial point at that moment was that I went on a burnout. And for me, as a very sportive person, I'm like, that is just impossible. I can really carry a lot. I can really do a lot. But if I go to the point when I'm burned out, that means it's really bad. So that's how I end up to the situation where I just went away with the customer. But not a big difference for them. They lost all of the customers almost in a couple of months or so. So it was really a fault of the organization at that point. But anyway, now I'm in a situation. I forgot about my presentation. Wait a second. Yeah, now I'm going to talk about freelance. So now I'm freelancing in a very kind of luxurious situation, because I've got a customer with a very big contract, big money, lots of freedom, very flexible, great relationship. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to do the projects, and, life is beautiful. And I don't need to worry about anything else. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes from my side, because I would recommend you never stop prospecting. Even if you have mega huge projects and big contracts, they can stop. You cannot predict situations. You can have great relationship with your customer, but management changes or financial situation with organization changes. And the first thing they cut consultants. So really make sure you have your eggs in different baskets that you can switch pretty quickly in case of things like that. And, even if you have a good contract, like 2-3 months notice period, sometimes nothing, not enough of time to find you another big customer like that. So that was one of the biggest mistakes on my side. Another big mistake when I started was we're not having a good financial advisor. Our family situation was slightly different. We had several businesses actually running at the same time. And in my situation, it was just not advisable to run my business as a freelance. We'd rather consider different form. And it's actually totally fine if you as a freelancer start running as a company and not as a solo freelancer, because of taxation reasons, because of your family situation. Again, it just optimally maybe better to put it all in one chunk, for instance. So what happened in my situation is that because of Belgium, Belgium specifics, I've got hit by taxes quite hard. And in Belgium, your taxes comes like you submit declaration, and then you have a revision of your declaration 2 years later, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 years later, you can get an additional tax request to pay for what you earned 2 years ago. And imagine that year you earned a lot, and 2 years later you earned little less. You're quite in a very difficult situation if you don't have very good financial advisor next to you and suggesting you to do certain like savings or certain things with your income. So that is the mistake number 3. I didn't think about making savings. I thought, like I mentioned before, the life is beautiful. I'm going to have a good contract. The money is going to come in anytime. I don't need to save anything. And also for Belgium specifics, I needed to do lots of expenses in order to cover this, inflow of income that I was having from the customer. So that was the situation that wasn't really resolved very well from the beginning. And that hit me very hard a few years later. I highly recommend to, maybe spend your money and time with a good consultant, maybe several of them actually, to refine your situation if you're already running your business and maybe considering, some changes in your business, like more customers coming, or, more employees that you're planning to hire as freelancers and stuff like that. So lesson number 4 I would like to share is that don't waste your time on difficult customers. And you may define your difficult customer yourself. It typically comes from the gut feeling when you start discussion with someone, you discuss the project, for instance, you discuss the contract, and you feel there is something is going on. There is no connection. There is a little bit of a friction with that person. Honestly, it never worked in my case. It's always something at the end that would either make you lose your time or money. So early enough, try to catch the signals and honestly just walk away, because the tiny time lost will cost you money, obviously, because you won't be able to find another customer. I spent, with what situation, 6 months on the project. full-time project, never been paid. Imagine, so I was not able to look for customers. I was not paid for the job I've done. I was in a very difficult situation to manage. So that's really something I would like to avoid in the future. And we can talk about signs of bad customer and what they're asking if you're interested. Now, as I was freelancing, and specifically at the moment when I lost my biggest customer, I was in a situation that actually I don't know what to do. I was lucky enough to, jump into freelancing very successfully, but then how do I proceed further? Who are the people to talk to? Where can I learn information? Where I can find information? And specifically when you're an expat in Belgium. In Belgium, there are 3 official languages. Like, go figure, what do you need to follow? I do speak Dutch a little bit, but it's not that I'm mega fluent and it can help me. It's still a bit difficult to orient, when you're an entrepreneur. So that is how the freelance business community came to place, because it came from an idea of how can we connect with people, right? I mentioned that already. How can we get the information? And as an event producer, the most natural way to do that is to organize an event. So I've partnered with certain people on that. And it's actually a little bit emotional story for me as well, because it didn't went all fantastic. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So we started working together with certain people, and we produced the first event just to see whether there is interest amongst Belgian freelancers to connect and to get information. And there was interest, obviously, because if someone is in that situation, then another one is in the same situation, absolutely. So that was the first event, then the second event. And I felt like I'm investing lots and lots of my time in this project, which was my idea, which was my baby. I really wanted this to succeed, but I never worked in the Belgian market as such. All my work was international. So for me to connect with Belgian freelancers was kind of one-sided. Yes, it's good to know them and what they do. It's good to know all the local specifics about taxation, finances, and so on. But it's not that I'm able to, benefit business-wise from this community. And my aspiration at that time was always to build a global event or international event, so I can reach out to either companies who are located somewhere else or freelancers who can work with me somewhere else, and stuff like that. Because doing projects in US, I would need to have people based in US. Doing projects in China, for instance, I would need to have people who are located in China, and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it was 2019 when certain things came together. And I really believe in science in life, where you see certain things happening and they bring you to the certain point when it's like, okay, and that is the time to actually rethink entire situation, because it brought you to the wrong destination. So that was 2019. Again, I was lucky to have another big project. I was working on this very hard. I was appointed as the president to a local chapter of meeting professionals. So all looked fantastic. It was like I was on the top of my career almost, with all these assignments and appointments, and I was mega happy. When all of a sudden I saw all this falling, like, how they call it, the cards house, one by one, because I was so much overwhelmed with everything I was doing. I was all over the place. I really wanted to succeed everywhere. Which resulted eventually in me losing the client. So it's not only, being fantastic with your projects and stuff. I did lose the client because of partly my own stupidity, but also partly because of the situation I was put in. My presidential role wasn't working that well because, again, I didn't have enough time to dedicate to association, which was 100% volunteer based. So you really need to motivate people to do things for you. So I saw people leaving. It was really devastating to experience, I have to say. And then eventually the question came to me about freelance business community that I was running with that partner. And I felt, like I mentioned, I'm not really getting out of it. And I'm constantly behind the scenes when she was on the far front of the community somehow, when event would be happening, I would be running like chicken without a head, running this entire thing. And she would be talking to people and representing this entire community. So that really felt wrong to me, not because of, this setup, but because if we're developing business together, it has to be an official entity. So my proposition to her was, okay, if we are in this together, and I'm happy to do what you do, I'm happy to do with what I do, but I want to develop this as a business and I want to run it equally, so we know that time that we're dedicating for free, by the way, on all that, is paying off in a business sense. So my proposition was denied. She didn't want to form official partnership. And that was for me like, oh, come on. At that point, I realized I lost biggest client. I'm not successful as a president of association, and I'm losing partner in the thing that I initiated, I really loved. And I see that she actually kind of pulling the blanket on her side. And, and I earlier said about the feelings, and that if something goes wrong, you really need to sit and think, okay, is it what you want to do, or is it time to change? And that was the time for me to actually, to take certain decisions. When I realized that she doesn't want to form partnerships and make it official, the decision was to split. But unfortunately, the split, it was very emotional for me. Honestly, I cried like so long. Unfortunately, the split happened the very wrong way, because from one day to another, I realized that I don't have access to my website anymore. I don't have access to all the social networks. Like, I have nothing. So basically, the other partner decided that I'm just pulling off, and she's running this whole thing alone. So that was really a shocking moment. So the friendship that I was talking earlier was finished like in a second, because no matter how good you are to each other, if you doing things behind each other back, that's really, really fucking. So anyway, to cut the story short, I managed to get the website back. I managed to get the social media assets, but none of the network. So I was sitting there, well, that's fantastic. 2 years dedicated to entire this thing. And you're sitting now with empty website, zero contacts, like what you're going to do with it? So just to put this a little bit, scroll forward a little bit, she did form a partnership with another person a few months later, and she did another event just a few months later. So that was so devastating. Honestly, I cried like crazy for 9 months. It took me 9 months to actually, get myself back in place and just realize, okay, what's going on? What just happened? It's been just such a great relationship. But anyway, it's similar to divorce, I guess. I've never been in a divorce situation, but probably it looks like that. So for long, I couldn't decide what do I do with this, whether it's a lost case or whether I should continue or, start something new. And you know what, as you start reassessing the situation and try to look in your inner self, you still have your mission and vision, right? That you haven't dropped, even though your partner lets you down. This crazy things happened with the situation. You still have your desires and ideas that you want to implement. So I came to a realization that I still want to do this, right? I had this idea from the beginning to connect freelancers with freelancers via events, freelancers with job givers at the events, give them opportunity to learn from each other. And I really wanted to go outside of Belgium. And I thought, well, if that's what happened, let her do whatever she's doing in Belgium and let me go outside of the country. And in order to do so, obviously I had to do it with a big bang. Otherwise, how do you get people to believe you if you're not doing great things? This is how we started talking to Robert, actually. That was exactly time when I was reincarnating myself in these efforts because I started to plan Freelance Business Month. I thought, actually, thanks to COVID, it was possible. Otherwise, I don't know, it would be a different story. I thought, I'm going to do a month-long conference. Let it sound totally crazy. Let people say she's totally gaga. But I saw there is an opportunity to came to the market refreshed with new idea, with new mission. Mission was the same, with new kind of message. Get people together, start finally connecting not only Belgians but also people outside of Belgium. And at that event, we had 47 nationalities represented, about like 80 speakers, people from NASA, from Microsoft. Like really, we made it such a massive, massive effort. And that was the first step in the current state of a freelance business community as it is now. So this is a story, a little bit of a total drop, like, being totally on the plinthus, as we say, and going a little bit higher with something mega amazing that would actually resonate with lots of people. For me personally, it was also a big kick in the butts because, you can't be sorry for such a long time. You can't be like, you can't suffer for such a long time. It's time for you to restart and chase your dreams. And that initiatives actually helped me and gave me so much power and strength to do other things. Like I mentioned, the presidency I was running, which was totally devastating and also falling apart. I closed the presidency term with award as the fastest growing chapter. I've quadrupled the number of volunteers in my board. So eventually 2020 going into 2021 ended up an absolutely like high note. Honestly, that was such a boost personally for me. And I hope I passed this energy to everyone who was around at the time, because otherwise I cannot explain how that actually all worked out. And so what is freelance community today is, like I mentioned, it's a community which is originated around events. And our mission is to provide resources for free to freelancers. So we're not competing with any membership organization that is out there for freelancers, because our mission is totally different. I was sourcing inspiration a lot from events that I was producing myself, working with corporates and, seeing all these mega speakers and like bombastic, motivational speeches, inspirational, like I mentioned, speakers. I wanted to build something like that to freelancers. So our goal eventually to build a event brand for freelancers, similar like Web Summit. I hope one day we'll be closer to that scale. That can resonate with experience, with knowledge, with skill sharing, with connections. And for me, the best feedback that I've got after Freelance Business Month last October is that people were telling me, listen, after that, I found people to work with. After that, I have increased my income, so and so. After that, I learned how to do this. I connected with people. Honestly, that was the best ever feedback that I could get. That means that we have done it with the purpose and we achieved our goals. And we've got actually almost 1,000 people attending. So going from a scratch and zero audience into 1,000, that was pretty amazing in just 3 months. And so what we're doing now is actually not only running Freelance Business Month again in October, but also we do sectoral events, which are focusing on specific profiles like marketing and sales, creatives, writers, software developers. These are the biggest categories at the moment. And we are supported by partners and sponsors. So that's how we generate funds for our activity, so that we can keep and continue doing these massive projects for freelancers. And like I mentioned, 2020 was quite impressive for me personally, because it also allowed me to look at how I do things and actually start scaling up and hire freelancers. So right now I'd like to talk about working with freelancers and what I learned from hiring freelancers, either for projects for my customers or actually building a team around Freelance Business Community, because the people I'm working for Freelance Business Community are also paid employees, freelancers. The first thing that I'd like to say that really drives me, nuts, and I'm pretty sure all the clients I'm working with, is your hourly rate. The moment you start talking about hourly rate, I'm ready to run away. Why it's so bad? Because it doesn't really give a customer a clue about how much it will cost them. What you have to do, and that's how I change also my approach in pricing, do project fee, right? Be smart, calculate how much time you may put in it, add some extra time that you think for difficult cases that you would need to fix, and provide a project fee. So easy on the customer, they know how much it will cost, they put in a budget, that's it, end of story. Stick to your promises. I've seen many situations when I'm hiring someone, we discuss any project deadlines, deliverables, when it has to be done, and then nothing, like, silence. Like, what happened? Did you die or what? Is it because I'm also freelancer and asking you to do certain work and I'm paying for that? You can treat me like, I can be the last in a row. That's totally wrong, because from a small project with some of you, something big may come up, because one day another freelancer who is giving you a job may land a huge project, and then you can be involved fully if you show yourself as a reliable person. If you're disappearing all of a sudden without any notice, it's just such a bad thing. Something recently I came across is vacation planning and your time off. Freelancers are flexible, obviously. You plan your time the way you want it. You go on vacation. I mean, not right now, probably it's difficult, but in general, quite easily. But you need to plan that a bit in advance. Just recently, I was hiring someone already introduced to the customer. They like her. They wanted to, hire that person. And from one day to another, she says that she's going on 3 weeks vacation and she's cutting off all the communication channels. I'm like, well, thank you very much. And the project is just in 2 months. So that's not going to work. So that type of surprises puts me also in a bad situation in front of my customer, but also you put yourself in a very bad light, meaning that you can change your mind from one day to another. And that is not what is what is welcomed, specifically if you have discussions about the project long time in advance, right? You could have said already that I'm planning actually 3 weeks off, then and then. At least it becomes clear from the beginning. So keep your business ethics. Situations like again, if you subcontracted by someone, going behind the back to the customer is like totally goodbye, ciao, never seen you again. Or doing some weird communication about like subcontractor who hired you, or just stay professional. Keep your opinions for yourself, especially when you work on the projects, because that can really harm big time and cause lots of damage for everyone who is involved. Professionalize yourself. Anything from signature, your email signature, to contracts, invoicing, and the way you do things. Why do I mention that? It seems to be like clear. I've seen emails passing by without a signature, not even a name mentioned on it. Like, what is going on? Quite often freelancers that I'm hiring, they like, okay, I'm ready to do the job. So where is your contract? Luckily, I have my contract that I checked with legals, and I make sure that I'm protected from all the risks and liabilities in the sense of hiring someone. But maybe one day you start hiring, and actually you should supply your contract to someone who hires you to represent your own interest. I haven't seen that too often, to be honest. Something like I hear a lot, oh, sorry, I was so busy, I have another project. I don't give a shit if you have another project, to be honest. I understand we all have projects, but you don't need to say that to the customer who's actually waiting for something urgently. Make sure you find time. If not, you communicate upfront that, okay, it's like, it's not going to work today, but I'll do it tomorrow, something like that. It just gives a wrong signal that you prioritize someone else to me, and that is not a good sign, obviously. So that's a bit of a learnings and advices when you work with the customer. The main takeaways, like I was sharing all this stuff. I hope it was a bit of a useful for you. But the main message I'd like to pass is that despite all your downs and bad moments, they do happen. Stay strong, be strong, and believe in your dreams and follow your feelings, whatever you want to accomplish. If you do have an idea, please do make it happen, because you will regret. There are so many ideas I regret I haven't implemented in my life, that now it's a bit too late because someone else has done it, or time just has passed, and it's not a good time anymore. Connect all your dots, like I mentioned. If you've seen Steve Jobs' presentation about the dots, totally brilliant, love it. The things are happening in life just for the reason, if you put them all together, they definitely bring you to a certain destination. That is what you want. And like I mentioned, if you feel frustration and you're arriving in the wrong place, then just divert, make it as quick as possible, because you'll be losing time and your nerves on top. And seek partnerships and develop your network. Robert mentioned that already. It's mega important. Freelancing is it's such a kind of lonely job sometimes, but I can't explain how grateful I am for the community that I have right now, because I can validate ideas, I can share things, I can get input pretty quickly. Whatever I have in mind, I can share and get response. And actually, I'm very happy to work with some of you. I think Camila is part of your community. She's pretty cool. So yeah, we do projects together with her. And two stories that I'd like to share to conclude. It's actually kind of underline what I've just said. And one story is from my mom that I remember from all my life. And this is a story about two frogs. Two frogs were dropped in a milk pot. And one of the frogs is like, oh shit, that's it, goodbye. And she drowned, or it, I don't know. But another one is like, no way, it's, I'm gonna get out of here. And she started jumping like crazy, jumping, and getting tired like hell, but still keep jumping until the milk became butter. And she just jumped out. So be that frog whenever it feels like you're drowning, because eventually you will succeed. And the second story from my cross-country trainer, who was a really tough lady. And honestly, there's no point to give up. You have to reach the goal. You have to reach the finish line. And she said once, when you're in a tank, like in the military tank, it's too late to be afraid. So once you got into something, so now you're in freelancing, it's too late to be afraid. You just have to drive forward. All right. So these are my advices.